This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Hold on, stop.
Welcome back to the Shit Show 2.0.
Okay, boomer.
Damn millennials. Wow.
Did not know that. Even flirters who are obviously mentally ill. You want to be my wife?
Oh, this is gonna go downhill real quick.
What is going on, and welcome to Take on the World with
Johnny!
Deb.
and Mike D. Here we are once again.
Coming at you twice as hard.
Deja vu.
Deja vu, mother.
So today's topic,
Or yesteryear's topic.
Well, you have to mention the podcast of the month.
I will.
Okay.
No, we already have the. Oh.
No, we don't already
Oh,
have
too
it.
soon?
Too
Too
soon,
soon?
man.
Damn
Too
it.
soon. All right, let's just air it out.
Okay.
We just did an entire episode.
An entire, really good episode.
Like not like last time where we did 20 minutes. We did an entire episode of gold. And I didn't hit record.
Wasn't gold.
It was gold.
It was okay.
It was maybe platinum.
It was good. It was good.
Well, let's go. Do it again.
We're doing it again. So today's episode is on a serial killer nun. And when I looked this up, I found there's more than one serial killer nun out there. So there may be another serial killer nun coming in the future.
Insert nun fantasies from John, right?
Yeah. TheKillerNun.com.
I looked up a ton of websites and none of them had nothing to do with Mother Rasputin, but they did have a lot of naughty nun stuff on it.
The naughty nun. She gives killer.
Which, if I finish this drink by the end of the episode, I might go into detail about the naughty nun. Naughty nun.
But before we start, we want to talk about the Deluxe Edition Network.
Most definitely.
You want to go to deluxeeditionnetwork.com and check out all the great podcasts because there's a ton of them there. And they cover a wide gambit of topics, including pop culture, movies, music, history,
but not limited to.
Interviews.
I always wait for John to say it because he always throws it in.
I was like, what? You were like,
And while you're there, you want to check out the podcast of the month for the month of December,
Which is?
the patriarch of the Deluxe Edition Network, Deluxe Edition with Casey and Ray.
Do we genuflect?
Golf clap. And Stephen Crypto Show. Both of these podcasts do interviews. They do pop culture. Great podcasts.
I'm not going to say it.
What were we going to say?
Interviews.
So you want to check them out. And then when you're done checking them out, come back. And this is episode 111 for us. So there's 110 other golden moments for you to listen to our voices.
But who's counting?
We certainly aren't.
Yeah.
111.
This could have been 102.
Well,
Well, this is probably really actually 112 since. Oh, I can't believe I did that.
but today's topic.
Today's topic is the killer nun, the serial killer nun, also known in her later years as Mother Rasputin. She had a couple other monikers that I don't have here. I don't know why.
Naughty nun.
The naughty nun? No, that wasn't one of her monikers.
The bitch from Greece.
Oh, jeez.
That wasn't in the first recording.
The
Golden.
bitch from the mountains.
So she was born Marina Soulikiotis in 1883. Although you can't confirm that year because the only reason they're saying 1883 is because she died at age 71 and they know when she died. But there is an alternate theory about when she was born, which would change her age.
To what?
I don't know.
109.
Alternate. What's the alternate?
She'd
109.
be younger.
Oh no, John, in the first recording of this, surmised that perhaps she was
No, wait, hold on.
an ancient,
Oh, I did.
Oh, vampire. Yeah.
a vampire.
Yeah, a vampire. She's a vampire
Vampirette.
nun
A vampress.
with a wiener.
A vampress with a wiener.
There's something wrong with it.
So, because of her age and when she was born, a lot of her childhood is a mystery.
But we do know she was probably born in the late 1800s.
Yes.
Or
I just think
In the
nobody kept track of time. I said this on the
Machu Picchu.
nobody kept track of time when you were born, except if you had money.
well, I think
You know,
also you're talking about you had 2 world wars. A lot of records were destroyed. Even if they did keep records, if you've ever
Sure.
tried to do your ancestry
yeah.
and your family comes from certain parts of the world, it's very difficult to know when someone was born, where they
Sure.
were born, when they died.
Absolutely.
So she grew up very poor. She worked on her family farm. There are also reports that she worked in a factory to bring home some daily wages to help support her family, but not confirmed. But it's out there.
Which is funny because my grandmother used to tell a story about she and her sister. They grew up on a family farm in this area. They lived in a city for a period of time. And they would send money home to their family, and they lied to their mother about how much they made so they could keep some of that money for themselves. So I have no doubt that Marina did that as well.
Probably because she had a longing for wealth and power.
I don't think she was sending anything home.
Sorry, they didn't pay me today.
It's not uncommon because even
I'll try again tomorrow.
even today, you have people who come to this country and send money home. So I find it interesting because things haven't really changed,
No.
although they have.
Yeah.
But the stories are the same, and that's what I find fascinating when you guys cover history. Although things change, they really don't.
Like
They
people's
stay the same.
mindsets don't change over the years. I guess pretty much what you're saying. Like, well, yeah, I want some money for myself too.
Yeah, people who
Or-
love their families want to help them get ahead,
There's,
and they want to get ahead too.
there's always going to be those people that you're always going to have the same people throughout time. People don't change.
So now this is in Greece. So you could imagine that like her career opportunities were very limited. She was a woman in
Early
Europe,
1900s.
in the early 1900s or late 1800s at this point. No, still early 1900s. And she lived in Greece. You can't imagine that there was too much for her to do. So around age 18 in 1901, she decided to become a nun.
And if I recall, there's not. We don't know how she got to this point.
No, I don't see. I swore there was one video that I watched that stated that her family sent her to the church,
Which wouldn't have been uncommon.
and then I was wondering if I was confusing that with another story because when I was first telling you about this, I was confusing 2 separate stories.
Well, I know we've talked about before the history of. So when people had a lot of children, there's this idea of the heir and the spare. So when they had a lot of children, typically they would only leave their belongings to the oldest. And then what do you do with the rest of these kids? Well, you have to have a lot of kids in case one dies because you need the spare. But a lot of times they sent them into the church. And that's like over the course of history, that's how the church gained so much power and money and land.
So
It's
way
not-
different times back then, man.
It's not an uncommon story.
yeah,
historically.
And I think the church back then probably had way more clout than it does now, because if you look at all how many people do you know that go to church on a Sunday? How common was it when you were a kid? Did you go to church on Sundays?
Absolutely.
Same here. And then when I got older, I'm like, no.
You turned into a duck.
I remember when I got off work, I worked at a seafood store, and I'm in the shower, and my mom and stepdad would be banging on it's time to go to church. I'm like, all right, I'll be done in 5 minutes. And I'm just like, we ain't going to fucking, like, we're going to leave without you. I'm like, oh, please don't.
I'll be right there.
Yeah.
In my house, it wasn't an option.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I remember at my dad's funeral, a friend of ours made the comment that he and my dad had the same drug problem, that their parents drug them to church. I mean, that was common.
yeah, I think, but what I guess they had way more clout back then than I feel they do now, because just a lot of people now just don't believe in like religion. They weren't grown up with it. It's just kind of on the back burner.
Yeah, and we've talked about this because there's a difference between religion and faith.
I feel like we just had this conversation.
But there definitely is, and I think organized religion has had a lot of black eyes that they deserve.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a difference between religion and faith. Faith is a personal relationship, and religion is the people side of it, and we're going to get more into that.
I always told myself before we move on, I don't need to go to an established.
You'd sound like me now.
I don't need to go to a church. I don't need to go here to worship God or whoever the fuck I believe in, whether that be
Cthulhu.
Whatever. I can do that on my own. I can do that from the foot of my bed. I can do that from, my car. And I never bought into all that. That's what really turned me off. And I never went to have to take my daughter to church and all that stuff. And I shied away from it. And I feel if my creator is going to judge me, then whatever. That's how I feel.
Sure. But relationships are good. And I think for me, that's what going to church has been about relationships.
Yeah, not me. I always felt like, it's time for the basket.
Yeah. Well, then you went to the
Now we
church.
kneel. Now we stand. Now we kneel. Now we sit. Now we sing. Now we kneel. Now we sing. Now we sit.
But I think that's the difference. And I think when we get into this story, you'll see the difference.
Hey, this is Casey Shearer.
And this is Ray.
Do you like pop culture?
We're pretty sure you do.
Then come on over and check us out at deluxeedition.show.
You will not be sorry. Or maybe you will be. I don't know.
So Marina decided to become a nun at the Greek Old Calendarus Eastern Orthodox Church and took the name Miriam Soulikiotis. Around 1906, she met Matthew Karpathakis.
Essentially became his acolyte. Is that what we decided?
Yeah,
I gave you that meme of like when you pronounce the name right, you're like,
Ka-chow.
sorry. Go ahead.
So she really went under his wing and followed him and his teachings very closely.
Do we know what he was about?
He was a calendarist. He was an old calendarist church minister.
I'll have
priest.
to read more about that. I have no idea.
In 1929, due to a disagreement with the old calendarist church about the adoption of the revised Julian calendar,
Which was a big deal.
yeah, huge deal.
The Gregorian calendar versus the Julian calendar. And we know, because I already told you, in this area we have a lot of
Yeah, you guys lost me here on this one.
they are Russian Orthodox.
Mhm.
They go by the Gregorian calendar. So their Christmas is in January as opposed to the Julian calendar. So this I get. When you say calendarus, I understand
So
it.
Carpathacus was upset about them changing the Julian calendar. So the old Calendar's church was going by the Julian calendar. So when they decided they were going to go with the revised Julian calendar, he goes, no, I don't want to do that. So he decided he's going to start his own church, which was the new Calendar's church.
Which is really the old calendar.
Right, which is really the old Calendar's church, because he wanted to stick by their original doctrine. So Miriam moved on to that church with Matthew. And in 1925 to 1927, she secured 9 acres of land. So the discussion was, where the hell did she get the money for 9 acres of land?
And we don't know where the land came from at this
So
point.
this is her first big purchase, so to speak.
Right.
Or-
But no one knows how she made the purchase. No one knows how, whether she was gifted the land, if this was the first of her devious ways to gain wealth and power.
Alleged.
Let's see. Got something for you, kiddo. All this is gonna cost you is 9 acres of land.
And it was mountaintop land, so this was expensive land. So in 1927, they set about building a monastery up there. Again, no information on how this is funded. And I'm going to say, as time and the story goes on, you can only wager a guess on how that happens.
It was gifted.
Yes. So the monastery they built, they called the Covenant of the Virgin in the Pines.
But I bet in Greek it's something different.
Oh, in Greek, I decided not even to put it down because I was not going to try to pronounce it. So because it was in the mountains, they decided they were going to use this as a tuberculosis treatment center for patients. I guess the cool, dry mountain air was good for the lungs, blah, 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 blah. But there were no medical facilities there, nor were there any record of any treatment given to any patients that came
That's
there.
terrible. So like they not only they lure him in here, we'll take care of you. Where do we go? Like, where's my bed? It's down in the basement.
Here's this pile of straw. Get comfy.
Yeah, just kick that rat out of those big jagged rocks out of the way. Make yourself at home.
So here's the thing. Back then, when you had tuberculosis, you couldn't stay with your general population. you couldn't stay in the town you were in. You were ostracized. You had to leave.
Right. Very contagious.
So basically, what they did is gave him a place to go and die.
And
It's terrible.
Think of it in terms of today, because we all have this reference of COVID-19. The early days of COVID-19 were, from a personal story, how long were we quarantined? A month? Really?
No, it was longer than that, wasn't it?
Well,
no.
When I got COVID, her boss made her stay home for almost a month.
Me and the kids were actually quarantined longer than he was. He was the only one who was ever tested. He was the only one who tested positive. He was in the hospital for it because he had it severely, but we were actually quarantined longer than him.
What they were trying to do is they were trying to get me to sign my wealth and land over, and I wouldn't do it.
He said, Governor.
Yeah.
So when they opened the monastery, Matthew was like 66 years old, which at the time was relatively old.
I would imagine.
I don't know why or how, but at some point Matthew was imprisoned.
So you think at some point they had an inkling of what was going on here? If he was imprisoned,
Well, so
the
No,
authorities
I
had to
don't
have
think
an
so.
idea that there was something hinky
They're,
going on.
look, they're stashed away in the mountains somewhere. You know, she's
Taking in sick people who are dying
I
left
don't
and
think
right,
they-
giving them property.
there might have been word here and there, but I don't think it was not like today. Like
No, there
what's
was
going on in the
yeah.
hills of Greece, wherever, you know.
I'm thinking it may have something to do with their import-export business, not so much maybe tuberculosis.
Okay, maybe I was thinking something else, but I'll
Which
keep it to myself.
They never reference any of that until later on. So when he came back from his imprisonment, now Miriam was handling all the day-to-day stuff while he was gone. And when he came back, he became more and more isolated as he would fast for 40 days. He would pray nonstop, and he would hide to get closer to God.
I
So-
realized what a shitbag he was.
So Miriam was handling most of the day-to-day decisions. And as his health declined over the next 12 years, she took over more and more and more of the church until when Matthew was on his deathbed, the Archbishop Chris Atomos from Florida visited, and he was trying to mend the division between the old and new Calanders churches. Like, let's bury the hatchet before you die. Let's get everybody on board. And he went in for this meeting, and he's sitting at Matthew's deathbed, and Miriam barges in with all the nuns in tow and stops the meeting before it even began. And there's speculation in my research how things would have been different had they come to a concession on the division.
And there's a modern reference for this because there is a Protestant church today, which I belong to, that has this type of division going on now. They're on the precipice of a split, which is a shame because I think when it comes to faith, division never comes from a good place.
So at this point, by 1939, Miriam Soulikiotis was acting as the church's sole authority. She became the abbess of the monastery.
Is he dead at this point?
I
Would
think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But who named her abbess?
I because
Probably him
when I
or
was
herself.
He may have done it on his deathbed.
maybe, but when I was reading about this, there are a lot of modern historians who
You're a bird.
who kind of say she was the scapegoat. But if he died in 1939, it's
And
not
things didn't come to the
likely-
head till
Yeah, later.
1950.
I think
It's not likely that she was a scapegoat. but
he
let's-
said you were a bitch. No, he said Abbas.
Let's keep going.
I'm pretty sure he said Abbas.
So she began wearing a black Greek-style veil over her forehead and eyebrows, which was a garb that was reserved for the highest ranking Eastern Orthodox nuns. It was her decision at this point to focus on financial investment, I guess, to sustain the monastery, the mission. I don't know.
Which is wise. I mean, unless you're stealing it.
Listen, I don't think she gave any thought to the longevity of this operation other than what she wanted.
You're so negative, John. Why are you like that?
I'm yeah, it might be.
So one of the main ways they chose to grow the finances was enforcing a vow of poverty, apparently for everybody but her. New members were required to give all their belongings to the church. Anybody who refused was eventually forced to comply. And this is
You mean people in the
Well, they're sick. Remember, when they're coming here, most of them are sick.
You meant people in her propagation, meaning her other fellow nuns and
The nuns had to take a vow of poverty, but
so they couldn't get it on the cut.
But everything that they had was taken care of by the church. Their food, their housing,
well, that's easily
they're-
done. Well, we'll just be a slop, give you housing,
and
you
they
can't have.
they all wore the same thing. So
yeah, you can't have access to my 900 acres in the mountains.
So the people who are forced to comply, this is a recurring theme now. So to find new members, and this is all new membership. If you were coming there for TB treatment, you had to become a member of the church. You couldn't get treatment unless you were a member.
Which there really was no treatment.
And because the people who were coming there had no place else to go because they were cast out of any place they were because they had TB. They didn't have a choice.
And let's not forget about the roaming droves of nuns that went out to recruit these people.
These nuns were going. Well, there was a whole network of nuns that went out.
Do we have a number though?
A network of them.
They were in golf carts, I'm sure. Like,
no, they
zipping
were
around.
Like, I don't know how large, because you can never tell how large a country is by I don't know how large Greece is, but like the church is here, and they were going like to the edges of Greece to find wealthy families and people who were either sick in a wealthy family or they felt were vulnerable.
Yes, they were taking advantage of vulnerable people.
And they were bringing them back to the church and saying, well, hey, you can get absolution from God for all your sins before you die. But
yeah,
you got to give me all your money and all your land.
All your land.
We talked about this because if when you had COVID, if someone had come to our house and said, we'll take Mike in, and said to our kids, if you give us your land and all your money, we'll take Mike in, what would our kids have said?
No, because they know I'd never do that.
He said, dude's gonna die and we'll bury him in the woods.
We got a backhoe. We can dig a hole.
Just lean him up against a tree. He'll
But
rot
no,
into the
I mean,
ground.
if you think about it at that time, I would have done within reason just about anything to help him.
I'm not gonna go off the handle and give all my money away to somebody I don't know and don't trust.
No, but if you said, okay, we have this, well, I did. I drove him to the hospital. If you said, okay, bring him to the emergency room. And at this time for TB, there was no emergency room to take him to.
There was no actual treatment for TB then.
No.
Could you imagine the same thing? You bring him to the emergency room. He's got COVID. We'll take all care. Just give me your land and all your finances.
What would I have done?
He'll
I would have said, fuck you, let me die.
He'll have fucking milkshakes for the rest of his life here.
Oh, hold on. Nobody mentioned milkshakes. Let me rethink my answer.
Exactly. You know what I mean? But when you think there's no hope.
Like, can I get a malted chocolate milkshake?
Oh, you can have all the malt balls you want.
Oh, take my house.
Let me sign.
Sorry, kids.
It's hard.
I sold you for a malt ball milkshake.
The thing about history is you always have to look at it from the perspective of the people at the time. You can't look at it from where you are today.
You can't look at it through your own lens. You have to look at
never
through the lens of when it was.
Yeah. You just don't know how you're going to react.
No.
And that's why I would love to get into the psyche of somebody who gets like the Jim Jones thing. And
Which we
like, because you like thinking like something like, I would fucking never do that, but really?
You might. You don't know.
You just might someday.
No.
Which, by the way, I got to get going. I got a clam rally to go to.
I have.
Sorry.
When we were recording this the first time, I thought a lot about Scientology, and I wanted to read that. We bought that book, Dynamics.
L. Bird Hutt. Were you guys Scientologists?
No, but it was too thick for me to read at the time. I had an infant.
Read it. It was ridiculous.
I didn't read it.
The guy thought he came from like a
Dianetics.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I never read it. We had an infant at the time, but we bought the book.
How much acres do you guys have?
Don't worry about it, bro.
Not enough to make it. Not enough to make it worth
Ask
your
my
while.
congregation.
But no,
I am an ordained minister
of the old/new/old clergy.
So listen,
Back on topic.
back on topic. So the people that were sick were either led to believe that they get treatment there, or that the monastery would help them heal due to their proximity to God. Joining the church, new members had to vow to rid themselves of evil and confess all their sins. Once they did this, they couldn't have any contact with their old friends or family anymore.
Think of cults.
Think of an abusive relationship.
Sure.
Think of an abusive husband or an abusive wife
Thank you.
who says, look, I'm going to control your money, number one. Number two, you can't talk to your friends and family no more. I'm the only one you could talk to.
That reminds me of that video you were watching. Just because I'm a woman, I can't be abusive?
Yeah. Now they have them isolated from all relationships. They have them isolated from their money. They'd require them to sign over their property and bank accounts. They'd force them to pray for hours and hours every day. Use sleep deprivation and starvation to motivate them to comply. Now, John, when we did the Reykjavik conviction,
Yeah.
when Lexi was down here with us, we did that one.
Yep.
And that's what they used to get those people to confess to a murder they didn't do.
Right.
I think that all the time. Why would you confess to something you didn't do? But it happens all
Well,
the
they
time.
torture the shit out of you, and you
You don't even have to torture someone.
That's how you get out of it. It's like you confess. Like, okay, let me stop having 40-degree air blow in my head.
Okay.
Yes,
but
I did it.
I've watched Chicago PD. Even in this country with we don't typically use these extreme tactics, but people confess to shit all the time that they don't do, and I don't understand it, but yet they do.
Sometimes you could just get someone to confess to something just by asking.
What I don't get is when you get pulled into the downtown station and immediately you don't ask for a lawyer. Like, I'm done. I ain't seen shit. I want a lawyer.
Well, that's what I'm going to do.
Lawyer.
'Cause he told me that's the first thing I should say. Lawyer.
You don't say nothing.
That's what he told me.
Lawyer.
So here's a quick story. There's an inmate. I thought he had something on him. And so he was out on one of my work crews. And I was doing something. And I said, I got to burn this. I said, dude, give me your lighter real quick. And I didn't look at him. I just said it offhand. He reached in his waistband, pulled out a lighter, and handed it to me.
Tricked him.
And he goes, "Oh fuck!" Like, I was just like I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to I got this string, man. Give me a lighter real quick. Come on. And he just handed it to me.
Or by accident?
What's that?
I forgot.
Did you do it on purpose?
Oh, I did it on purpose. I knew he had something.
Oh, I got you. I thought you. Okay.
He's that smart.
No, it's just you learn these things. You see the way people act.
No,
It's
it
like,
is smart.
Did you
I
go
wouldn't
wicker man on him? Like, now we're gonna have to burn you in a wicker, what is that thing? What do you call that? Like
Getting the
effigy.
Effigy?
Get in the TB room.
An effigy of a maintenance officer.
All right, back to the show.
I'm sorry, sir. It was just a lighter. You're not human.
All right. So if the person was sick, this harsh treatment would often result in their death. A vow of silence was enforced. Anyone caught talking to another person was punished. And they were punished.
Are you yawning?
I just yawned. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. I didn't even look at you when I caught it.
It's like you've been doing this all day.
I could do this for a living.
If they got caught talking,
I did.
they would either be beaten, whipped, locked up in chains, whatever. They were locked in cells. Most of the time, cells where TB patients had already died. Locals claimed to hear screams from the monastery at night, and I remember that. So from here, I got into a couple specific people because these people and the incidents led to the downfall of Mother Rasputin. Miss Becca and her children came to study with Miriam, and apparently her husband did too, but they don't mention him at all until right towards the end. She was very unaware of the things that were happening there. What she was at she was with a theology tutor, and a theology tutor said, well, you know who you really need to go see? You need to go see Miriam at the Virgin in the Pines because she knows her shit.
That's crazy.
And she did.
Death sentence.
So when she got there, she signed over her property to the church.
Okay, because I call BS on this. It's not likely she actually owned property. Her husband likely owned the property and signed it over, and they just blamed it on her.
She could have had inherited property.
And I am not a women's studies kind of person.
I don't know. Maybe Greece is like one of the places like Saipan where the men can't own
I
land.
doubt it. I highly doubt it. But I don't know for sure, so I'll shut up now.
So when she saw Miriam using violence to get what she wanted, she tried to take her children and leave.
As any mother should.
Miss Becca was locked in a cell where TB patients had died. She cried and begged for aid, but her cries went unanswered because apparently this monastery is pretty big, and like only certain people would go to certain areas of I don't know, but nobody ever heard of. She was only given a few bites of food at a time. And when she was finally released from the cell, she quickly fell into a coma because she was in poor shape. When she was in a coma, she received no aid or any help of any kind.
Notice this trend? As soon as they leave the cell, they fall into a coma and die.
Well, I think, they don't probably.
Does she like whack him over the head like one last time real hard?
I'm thinking they don't let him out of the cell until they're close to the end. Until they're so weak they can't do anything.
Probably. They can't.
But you would think like one person would like come through and survive.
Well,
every single one was like they let him out of the cell. They had questions, they let him out of the cell, and they succumbed to the death.
Doesn't it go back to though the only thing that takes for what's the quote? The only thing that takes for evil
to triumph is good men to do nothing.
Right. And in this case, that's that. I mean, you had other nuns there. I mean, and we're going to get to that. Some of them do, but not en masse. I mean, if all these nuns that are there, and I don't know how many there were, but if they had all gotten together and said, bitch, no, this is not the way things are supposed to be.
I don't think they would ever say that. They were probably all just scared and did what they were told.
Right, but that goes into the mentality of how people are sucked into these kinds of cults, which would be an interesting topic for future.
So this says Mr. Becca became ill and also died in isolation. I believe that's a typo and it's Miss Becca.
But either way, both Beccas are dead at this point. And
the children are now orphans and probably being held by the nuns.
Probably because at this point they own everything they have.
That sounds more.
Yeah, because the Mr. doesn't make any sense to me at all.
More better.
But it's not my typo. This was taken directly from a source. This story.
Hotnuns.com.
And yes.
Naughtynuns.com.
Naughtynuns.com. This story and this MO was repeated over and over and over again in this place. TB patients came looking for spiritual healing and got locked in cells after they signed over their wealth. They would fester and die.
Well, she found her niche and it worked for her.
It did.
Until it didn't.
If one of the other nuns ever spoke out against what was going on, she was singled out. She was accused of immorality, and the other nuns were ordered to assault her.
Beat the fuck out of her.
Which made them culpable.
Yes. Sister Thea was one of those nuns. After she was assaulted by the other nuns by the order of the abbess, Sister Theo died on the spot from internal bleeding. All for the sin of disagreeing with Miriam.
How do you think, dude? Could you imagine getting beat to death by a bunch of nuns?
Naughty nuns?
You fantasize
about that.
I could imagine that.
Still haven't had enough.
Theorize about getting beat to death by some like old ass nuns. Like I remember the nuns I went to school with. They were like old and they smelled weird. They smelled like old books.
I'm a Protestant. I don't know anything
every time
about nuns.
I don't know, bro.
Like, what are they beating you with a crucifix and a ruler? I got hit with a ruler.
Beating with a crucifix.
Never got beaten at all.
Shit, how dare you only have 9 acres of land? I want a 10.
But there's other nuns who spoke out.
Another nun, Sister Maria, spoke out against Miriam. She too was brutally beaten, and when she was taken to the hospital. When she got there, she had massive internal bleeding, and she had internal organ damage. And she died at the hospital. So I guess there was some kind of investigation because the church denied Miriam's involvement in any way, but eyewitnesses there contradicted that denial.
And then you wonder where that and you see this not just in reference to this investigation, like somebody dropped the ball. You see it in modern times too, where there have been signs, there have been investigations, whether it be child abuse or anything else, and somebody just
But how do you
misses
keep
something
that big under wraps?
Because they were up in the mountains. They weren't really in town. Nobody wanted to go there because it was TB land.
Yeah, but still, like you have like nuns that disobey. You're beat to death.
And you go to the hospital with internal bleeding, and
it's a fucking death factory.
What happened to her?
I tripped down the stairs over my crucifix.
But it still happens.
What happens to abused women who go to the hospital when they're questioned about it?
They lie.
I ran into a door.
Yeah, I think there was probably a lot of that too, Mike. When he's like, they
fell down the stairs.
Didn't really question it because like, oh, well, that's not.
And if you're not gonna
inconceivable at that time,
if you're not gonna say or press charges, what are they supposed to do?
Right.
Plus, even if there was suspicion on the abbess, it was like, she is a woman of God. There's no way she did this.
We cannot desecrate the church like that.
Hey, abbess.
Hey, abbess.
Oh, that was bad. Sorry.
So remember when I said that people in the town had heard strange noises coming from the monastery?
Oh yeah, naughty little nun.
Naughty nun.
That's right.
So one night
take that veil off, baby.
There was
dirty.
There was 2 drunk men.
Just the way Daddy likes it.
Father. It's a church.
Sweet father. No, I can't say that. That's so gross.
So these 2 drunk guys jumped over the wall to investigate these sounds that they heard, and they found an elderly woman chained and emaciated from malnutrition. They said, "Look, can we help you? Is there something we could do? Can we get you out? We're going to get you out of here." And she says, No. I need to stay here and endure this torture to save my eternal soul. And these are the tactics that were done over and over and over for over a decade. In 1949, word of this had spread well beyond the locals and started to draw unwanted attention. In 1949, a woman joined the church, cut off her family, signed over her property, just as they were always made to do. The woman's daughter contacted the authorities and said, "Look, my mom would never sign that property over. It wouldn't happen."
As would our kids if we had done something similar.
Right. Never going to happen.
Authorities started an investigation, but they never acted on it. The final straw that put Miriam's deeds in the spotlight was, here we go. You want to stop something? America.
America. Fuck yeah.
So Samila Spiritus was an 18-year-old American woman from Ohio. She was of Greek descent. She visited Greece in 1949 as a tourist, and she never returned home. Her parents got worried. They contacted the authorities, but at some point, Samila did call her family and say, look, I'm alive. Everything's good. But they weren't satisfied with that, and they told the authorities, well, the last place she was at this monastery.
Can you imagine getting a call from our daughter? It's okay, Mom and Dad. I joined the nunnery.
Send the cops there now.
Okay.
Something's up with this shit.
So the FBI got involved, and America, they contacted the Greek police. This was the downfall of Mother Miriam Rasputin.
And they never found this girl? We don't know what happened to her.
No.
And at that point, we shoved that Red, white, and blue flag up your candy ass, bitch.
So on December 4th, 1950, 85 police officers arrived at the monastery. They searched the grounds.
Hey, John, what did those police look like?
They were buff stuff.
They were buff. They all had high, tight haircuts.
They were buff, tough, and they had the stuff.
Pretty sure they all wear onesies.
So they started searching the grounds.
Leotards.
The first thing they focused on was rescuing victims from all over the grounds.
Which, yeah.
46 children were taken from the nuns and sent to other orphanages. They found several elderly, malnourished women randomly about the property. It didn't say how many, but they did find 170 graves dug all over the property.
Like fresh, open?
Well, you could tell even over, like if you go to
She got sloppy.
if you go to the cemetery, a grave that's 5 years old, if there's no, they don't manicure it, they don't add dirt to the top and put it sinks down.
Yeah.
So they could tell there were graves there because they obviously they weren't out there gardening.
They didn't have a backhoe.
Yeah, you got to tamp that stuff down. You got to pack that dirt.
Should we go garden the grounds? No, go down to the tunnels and beat the tuberculosis patients.
I was actually surprised that it was only 170 because you're talking about 3 decades potentially.
Well, it's like just over 10 years that she had full control, and
I thought it was 39. No, 49. Okay,
well, 39 to 49, just over 10 years. 1950s when they raided the place.
that's right. Sorry.
With them old hot Greek police officers.
Them buff stuff Greek police officers right now up in here.
All the leather gear. Mhm. Leather straps and boots. Mhm.
That's one of the things I was surprised about when we
They had
traveled.
leather straps and boots on a police officer?
When we traveled to other countries, though, we've talked about this before, that police in other countries are much more militaristic
Yeah.
than they are in this country.
Yeah.
Um,
Mexico, they were going down the road in the back of a Toyota pickup truck with a gun on top of the truck, and every one of the officers in the back, 6 of them, would have AR-15s.
in Nicaragua, I don't think there was a difference
Oh.
between the police and military.
If you got caught taking a picture of the police in Mexico or Nicaragua, you
Expect trouble
could expect a lot of trouble. You could probably get beaten down.
because of the
So-
cartels.
When we
I'm
were,
a sovereign citizen. I'm a sovereign citizen.
Sovereign, fuck you. So when we were in Panama, we were going,
Panama.
fuck yeah. So we were in Panama. There was a police officer there, and I was talking to her, and I'm like, "Can I get a picture with you?" So we ended up getting our picture taken with this Panamanian police officer.
Then he
Not
pulled her aside and killed
militaristic
her?
at all.
Not military. She was beautiful. She was a beautiful young lady.
Which is why.
How dare you?
Even though,
Merca.
even though he was there with his wife, whatever.
But you were in the picture.
Which makes it kind of kinky.
Anyway. Moving right along.
Tell me more, will you please?
Hotnuns.com. I'll tell you more after another.
So the authorities slowly started to uncover the plot of them. They uncovered the money and the property being taken from those who were lured there to the monastery. They discovered that those who were sick who arrived, they were withheld treatment. Like, this investigation was uncovering everything. After the church had the property, they would just let the person die rather than provide medicine. And the only time doctors came to the monastery was to fill out death certificates.
Well, someone has to collect on the insurance.
We need another morgue officer to go to the monastery.
So in 1950, when she was arrested, she had nearly $750,000 on her, and the deeds to over 300 properties.
Which probably is a big deal for this part of the world. It's not easy to own property in other countries.
You gotta
Not 300. I would say that.
I would say the properties were worth millions of dollars by themselves, even back then.
Hell yeah.
Possible.
Because they were
Well,
they
I
were targeting
mean,
rich people.
Yeah, rich people. And Greece is beautiful, but it's not as big as the States.
No.
So prosecutors had a hard time charging her despite the evidence that they had, because the victims had volunteered for treatment and they had volunteered their wealth. Miriam originally was charged with the illegal importing of tires and illegally exporting olive oil.
Apparently, they had lots of vehicles. And again, olive oil, think of it historically. At one
They
time,
used all that rubber for all them hot Greek officers.
at one time, olive oil was currency.
But I know there's a huge black market for olive oil.
Olive oil is expensive.
It's worth it.
So she was found guilty on those charges and she was sentenced to 26 months. She maintained her innocence throughout the trial and never showed any concern for her fate. So while she's serving these 26 months, they continue to investigate. And she said that the accusations were nothing more than satanic fiction. In 1953,
So just hogwash now.
hogwash.
Yeah.
In February 1953, she was charged with 4 murders, embezzlement, torture, extortion, and related crimes. At trial, she was found guilty and sentenced to 14 years. 14 years for murdering 4 people, stealing all their money, torturing them, and extorting them.
Manslaughter.
Well, that's the thing.
Nothing, dude.
That's the thing. Like, she never physically killed anyone. She just let them die.
Or
were
had
dying.
her cronies beat him up.
And really, I mean, if I'm an attorney, they were dying anyway.
Well, I mean, what about the people the nuns that resisted? And she's
There's
like,
no treatment.
beat
for
their
them.
ass.
Those are probably the 4.
make them conform.
Yeah, those are
And
probably
they
the
wind
4.
up dying. That's on her hands.
Right. And those are probably the 4.
So of that 14 years, she served about 9 months, because November 23rd, 1954, Miriam Soulikiotis died at age 71.
Thank God.
After her death, the Greek government outlawed the Calendarist movement. However, none of the nuns refused to give up their faith. Like they just, I'm not giving it up. This is my faith. I'm not giving it up.
They were probably terrified because they didn't know. Maybe there's somebody else waiting in the wings to punch him in the face with a phone book.
Well, let's be clear. We're not clear on what the differences were in belief systems. I don't know what's the difference between the new and old Calendarist church.
But the authorities went
Yeah.
out. The authorities went out looking for these nuns to take them into custody, and they disappeared before the authorities could find them.
They were probably protected by other acolytes.
Probably reabsorbed into the church. Who knows?
The new Calendarist or the old Calendarist?
The new, old, newish, oldish, old English, new.
The mediumish.
Medium-ish,
The medium Calendarist church.
mild sauce.
Now, he always tells me I'm judgy. But
As women typically are.
if you were there and there's no way you didn't have any clue what was going on. You know, especially if you're a person of faith, you know right from
Oh, I'd
wrong.
be down there fucking kicking some old lady in the ribs in her tuberculosis dungeon.
No.
Come on, you got to have another pearl in there.
And again, you have to, when you look at history, you have to look at it through the lens of the times. But do you really think you could have ever owned a slave, another person?
I don't think I could have.
No, I don't think I could have either. I don't think I could have used my faith to make that okay. I don't think I could use my faith
I don't want to comment on any of this.
to make this
Just bleep my face out on this whole thing and cut it.
okay.
I don't want to be involved in some race baiting. I'll wind up on the news.
Okay, well, race aside,
Podcaster says he'd own slaves.
this, do you think you could use your faith system to make this
To justify
treatment
this.
of other people okay?
Depends on how much I hated that person.
Well, they didn't even know
then it's
them.
not. Then it's not based on your belief system.
It's
It's
not
based on hate.
your faith. It's based on hate. Yes. What I believe, again, I can differentiate between my faith and my religion. We talked about this.
I'm not
Faith
some
is
rich asshole that would go down to a riverside and be like, I
She
want that
wasn't-
boy. He got good muscles. He'll
But
go
she
work for me."
wasn't either. She didn't come
He looks
from
like
money.
a Greek police officer.
He looks like that one of them fine, blonde hair, blue eyed Greek police officers.
So
I'll
okay,
take him.
you're poor, so you can use that to prey on other people. No, like for
Listen,
me personally, I don't know how me in this body can do that.
My
100
family
years
was-
ago, 200 years ago, I don't know.
My family was never rich. They didn't own
Oh.
slaves.
Oh,
We didn't even come over here till the early 1900s.
no, our people have been here before there was a here
My
to be.
people. Maybe.
But my people didn't own slaves. No way.
I think my lineage is just a bunch of.
My mom used to say we were Heinz 57.
We were a bunch of.
We're a little bit of everything.
I'm a lot of bit of German.
We were a bunch of outlaw fucking Ukrainians, always getting into trouble.
So anyway,
Ukrainians.
it was at the end of her reign where she gained the moniker
Mother Rasputin.
Mother Rasputin.
Or that bitch from the mountains.
But honestly, like you have all this land and all this stuff that she took, and she was accused. Well, she was tried for 4 murders. She was thought to have committed like 26, but it's estimated she probably murdered well over 200,
What I want to know is,
or had a hand in their death.
where did all that land go to?
After her death?
Yeah.
After death, probably to the state.
Church? That'd
What
be
church?
fucked up.
No, the
They
church.
outlawed
They
the
outlawed the
church.
church.
Wow.
Back to
Good.
the state. Well, like in the state we live in, who's the biggest landowner?
What if the state was behind the church?
Who is the biggest landowner in this state?
Bill Gates.
State of Pennsylvania.
The state of
Oh,
Pennsylvania.
Wait, what?
The state of
Pennsylvania owns more property
Pennsylvania.
in Pennsylvania, the state. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania
I'm
owns
okay with that as long as the state game lands and like
well, a lot
I'm
of it
just
is.
saying. So it
parks
could
and shit. Hell yeah.
300 properties.
If it was like, yeah, we own all of Pennsylvania, but it's all like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
Actually, for a long time in the United States, one of the largest single landowners was Ted Turner.
Really?
Turner.
He owned
Yum.
uninterrupted land from almost up in Canada
I'll be back.
all the way down to Texas.
It's a shame I don't have.
I think
Who is it today?
that could be erroneous. Anyway, with John just up and leaving us,
I thought it was the dude from Yellowstone.
we took on Mother Rasputin, the serial killing naughty nun. Now you go take on the world.
This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Hold on, stop.
Welcome back to the shit show 2.0.
Okay, Boomer.
Damn millennials. Wow.
Did not know that. Even flirters who are obviously mentally ill. You want to be my wife?
Oh, this is gonna go downhill real quick.